All right. Now we are live on the air with Walking in Spirit and Truth. This is John Craig.
And this is Sandy.
And it's good to be with you all this evening.
It is good to be with you.
So we
on this election
night. Oh my goodness, this is nail biting. At least for me it is. Just watching everything take place and what's been going on over the last several months. I am ready for this election cycle to be over with.
Well, I'm not watching tonight. I'm just praying.
Pray. We need to pray. We need to pray that all fraud and all manipulation will be found out
before
and taken care of rightly.
Yeah.
So that's what we're praying for. But here we are, and I'm excited about what we are going to be talking about tonight here on Walking in Spirit and Truth.
Absolutely. What are we going to be talking about?
We're going to be talking about precious things.
Precious things.
Yes. Precious
Well,
things.
Anyway, we want you guys to get out and tell everybody, hey, join us right now live on YouTube, and let's fill the house. And also comment. We want to hear your voice. Let us know what you're thinking. And wouldn't you say?
That's right. I mean, the chat is open, and so you can be part of the conversation that way. We'd love to see and hear what your thoughts are.
Hear?
Yep. Hear those keyboards typing away.
I don't think we can hear them.
No.
Unfortunately.
That's right. That is right.
Okay. Well, we are, like I said, we are so excited that you're here with us this evening. You know, it's always weird when I see the actual feed that's coming through YouTube and it's backwards.
Yeah, our camera puts it backwards on our main screen.
It freaks me out a little bit. Maybe it doesn't you, but it does me. It freaks me out just a little bit right now. Anyway, so we want to say hello to Tova. It's so good that you are listening to us this evening and join a part. You have such great wisdom, and we want you to be a part of that too. We just need to have you live on the air with us. That's what we need to do. Hey, but come into the room. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to see your comments. So we're saying that over and over again because we are not full enough, right?
That's right. We're loading up the room right now.
Are we loading up the room?
Well, I hope we're loading up the room right now.
We're saying that over and over again. You know, you always do that. Have you ever thought about muting your phone before you ever go into something? Have you ever thought about that?
Actually, I have, but my button's not working for some reason right now. So
you've been doing that for months, even at like when we have tour talk and things, you do that.
So it's good now.
It's good?
Yeah. I just had to get into the chat room myself.
Oh, I'm glad you're there.
Right.
Okay. Well, tonight we have been talking about water. Well, and how do we talk about water? We've started with the 4 rivers of Eden, and we are going very slowly as we're digging through some things because, you know, it just takes a little bit of scripture, and there's so much to explore and so much to experience. So take heart.
Well, because we're talking about these rivers, there's precious things, precious metals, precious stones that are around it. So when you're mining for those things, you want to take your time because you don't want to miss one nugget, do you?
No.
All right. So that's how I see it.
That's how you see it?
That's right. But it's worth the wait. I mean, it's worth the working through it, because when we get done with it, our goal is that we see Yeshua in a whole new light. We understand what our role is, and we actually see some things prophetically being lived out that was from the beginning. And that gives us a better understanding of who we are and what our walk is to be like.
True. I'm sitting here trying to figure things out on chat and things. So sorry about that. Keep talking for a second while I do this.
So the whole thing about the rivers is that, first off, when we go back to the rivers themselves, and Sandy, you've been talking about how the rivers are related to the menorah. And so when you look at the menorah, what do we have? We've got the 7 branches with the middle as the shamash, or the servant, which is Yeshua. And everything branches or stems forth from Yeshua. That's that river. So if you take it over to Ezekiel, or you take it over to the book of Revelation, we see a river that flows from the throne. And so we've got some parallels with Genesis chapter 2 and with Revelation. And that's that river that comes from the shamash, from the very center, from the throne. And that river brings forth, and when you look at it, it brings life. And when it brings forth life, it nourishes the trees that are planted. And we talk about trees, they're in Genesis, right? And we have the trees that are planted by the river where they bear fruit every month, and their leaves are for healing. So, but in this case, when we're talking about what we're going to be talking about today with bdellium, then we're talking about.
You're not even supposed to say that yet. I was
Well,
going to introduce that later.
Well, we're going to introduce that. But as we're talking about that, we're talking about some very, very precious things that are
Let's
there.
use another word. Some important things anyway, because they really each relate to us as believers too. And I love that. But yeah, we're gonna go start with our text right now. And so let's turn to Genesis. Like I said, we're gonna have this memorized. Genesis 2 verses 10 through 14, and let's read it one more time.
Genesis 2, 10 through 14. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads. The name of the first is Pishon, that is it, which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and the onyx stone. And the name of the second river is Gihon, and the same is that it compasseth about the whole land of Ethiopia. And the name of the third river is Hiddekel, and that is it, that goes toward the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates.
All right. Okay, so here we go. And we've been talking about the Pishon. We've talked about good gold. We've been talking about the river of life. We've been talking about the living water. And tonight we're exploring some further things that we notice that's in the Pishon. And that specifically is the bdellium. Now, that's not something that's common that most of us use in our everyday language. So we're not really familiar with it. But I think what's really interesting is when you look at bdellium, you read about it, it actually is related to myrrh. And actually, in all actuality, in India, the myrrh is called bdellium. And in the Somalia and Abyssinia. But so I'm just going to give you some little bit of statistics that it is the myrrh from Abyssinia and Somalia is called bdellium, which I thought that is very interesting. And it says it's also similar to Indian myrrh, which is also called bdellium. And it says here that it produces an oil that's inferior to the quality of true myrrh. But I find it very interesting that myrrh and bdellium have that relationship, because myrrh is wonderful oil for healing and other things, for health. And so what is the bdellium anyway? Because sometimes when you read about it, in scripture, if you don't state it out, you think it's stone or it's something, but it happens to be that resin that's produced from this tree. And it's a thorny shrub, yellowish, greenish. Anyway, it produces this liquid that as it hardens, it's just very much like myrrh. And myrrh, we are familiar with that one, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Of course, we know we can tie that to Yeshua because that was used in the practice of burial.
Right.
And it's also in the practice of medicine as well, because myrrh is very good for the health and for healing. And so it has those healing properties. And again, I think it's very interesting, as we were talking about, is bdellium is a resin that comes from a tree. And we were talking about that the trees are planted by the living water. And so we have the picture of that which was in the beginning.
What's produced from the tree.
That's what produced from the tree, and that which is from the beginning will be restored once again. Shall we say that as Revelation comes about, it's the restoration of the garden.
It's exactly right. And that's that's what we're looking for. But
come Yeshua, come. We're ready for that.
Yeshua, but I don't want us to forget that there's a relationship between the myrrh and the bdellium, because then that means that we see the myrrh or the bdellium from the very beginning in Genesis 2, in that first week of creation, which we know it was created then too, but there's just a relationship there, and I don't want you to forget it. because forget it. But so let's look what specific qualities then. If myrrh has all those healing properties, what does bdellium have? Well, bdellium also lowers blood cholesterol.
That's good.
I'm like, hello,
Yeah,
hello.
that's a good thing.
So,
Well, to a certain point, we don't want our cholesterol to go too low because we need good fats that are in our system so it can feed our brain. Can I throw something in regarding prescription medication? Is that you have to be careful. Those cholesterol lowering prescriptions have side effects if it gets too low, that it does affect the brain, and it does because there are certain fats that are good that we need in our brain because brain needs food. And so those are some things that we look at. But I think with bdellium, because it's natural, it probably brings a balance in the cholesterol.
well, it says its ketonic steroid compounds possess the ability to lower the LDL in the body.
Okay, and that's
and
a good
prevent
thing.
plaque buildup in the arterial walls.
And that's a good thing too.
It also, which it's also known that bdellium in India is known as Google, only not Google, it's Guggul. So when I looked up how to say the word, I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, so it's an aid in losing weight. So everybody now run out and get your bdellium. Run out and get your Google right now. It helps you lose weight.
So it speeds up your metabolism.
Yeah, it says that it's a natural remedy to lose weight and maintain a healthy weight because it contains active thyroid hormones that increase the metabolic rate of the body. The hormones also play a key role in the regulation of metabolism, and it protects from infection. So another good thing that this natural thing does for us. And then the Google or the bdellium relieves arthritic pain. So that's helpful as well. And it treats skin problems because it contains an anti-inflammatory compound. And the anti-inflammatory compound is called glucosterone. Yeah, so it treats skin inflammation and it prevents heart disease. So lots of good qualities about this thing that's found in the river in the Pishon. So I want us to remember, though, that the bdellium is related to something in the word.
Well, one of the things, too, before we move on to that, is to consider when you look at it here in Genesis chapter 2, is that apparently it's sitting in abundance because it was enough to be recognized, to be written down. So we're also looking that it is the abundance of it means that there are qualities there that we need to look at a little bit more closely. So we're going to mine.
Are we going to mine?
We're mining for
okay,
bdellium.
Mine with us, everybody. Mine with us. Okay, so we're going to go forward now. And there's something in scripture that we see bdellium related to, or we hear it mentioned with. And does anybody know what that was? Drum roll. Let's turn to Numbers 11:7.
Numbers 11:7.
Numbers 11:7. I'm so used to clapping. I'm clapping because we clap. Emery and I clap all the time. Sing and clap and sing and clap.
She likes that.
She does.
She has that cute little giggle.
Oh, everybody's got to hear it. It's like
And she gets this big old grin on her face.
I love her laugh. It can light up a room.
And then she starts to bounce.
Well, she bounces if you sing. And I love it because she keeps rhythm.
So we've got Numbers 11.
Numbers 11:7.
Numbers 11:7, which reads, "Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance like that of bdellium."
Okay, now when you've read that before, did you ever research out? I'm talking previously. What exactly is that? Because we're told it looks like bdellium, but what's bdellium? Did you ever think about that back in the day?
No, because bdellium was one of those 3-syllable words that we skip over.
It's 4 syllables.
Yeah, that too, 4 syllables. Bdellium. Bdellium. There you go.
Bdellium. All right, we are just being too goofy tonight. That's okay, though. Okay, so we see here in Exodus that it's related to manna. It's related to coriander seeds. So let's explore why. Why would that be related to each other? And remember that this is found in the river Pishon that stems from the river of life, which is Yeshua HaMashiach, the living water. So don't ever forget the source from which all of this comes, because when the Israelites were traveling in the desert, in the wilderness for 40 years, they were sustained by the rock. It was sustained by the river, which followed them, the living water, Yeshua HaMashiach. So everything is going to connect together. All these dots connect to one another. Okay, and let us also remember that in the midst of this 40-year track, did anything ever wear out?
Nope, their shoes never wore out. Their clothes did not wear out. Everything was preserved for the 40 years.
They had this water cooler that was the water that was always provided. Their clothes never wore out. There was complete provision. They didn't have to worry or fret. So today, I don't think we can imagine things lasting a couple years, much less 40 years, because they don't build it like they used to. But there's more than that. There was much more of a miracle. But for 40 years, the Father provided them the water. He provided them or maintained what they had. But during all this time, there was something that was always there, at least every day, except for the seventh day, and that was the manna.
Yes.
Which had the appearance of bdellium.
So you can think about this. So now, what does this bdellium look like? And you can kind of picture it as a, if you go back and you think of it as a resin from a tree, then think about what it would mean every morning to step out of your tent and see this shimmering glow on the ground across the desert. Wouldn't that be amazing? Just covering.
Yes, it would be amazing. So, all right.
Okay,
Sorry
we are
about that. I'm
back
not
again.
sure what happened there. Do you know what happened?
I don't know what happened. Froze up.
It did. Okay. So, with that being said, we're going to continue our discussion, and hopefully no more freezing up. We will continue talking about manna. So we know that the manna was provided daily. Nobody had to fret or worry. Now, we've talked about something else recently that was provided daily. What was that? That was the dew. Remember, we talked about the dew. The dew was always there. It was there no matter what. The water, the rain in the garden would water the ground, but that had to be, if you were irrigating, you would have to manipulate where it went. The rain would fall, but from the river, you would have to manipulate the river even. And the rain didn't come every day. Well, in the garden, it didn't come for a long time. But what I'm trying to help us understand is that for Mr. and Mrs. Adam, they had a river that they could manipulate somehow or cart the water from one place to another. But for dew, it was always there, that sparkling, glistening, radiant light that hit it, that shone like a rainbow when it hit it. That dew was there every day, just as the manna is there. So there's a relationship that we see right there. Now, if we further think about the bdellium, we know that it's called like this stone-like crystal because of the resin, but it says that it appeared as dew on grass. And you just referenced that a minute ago, that dew, when it hits, the sunlight hits it, it shows as a prism and it reflects a rainbow. How beautiful that is, that the manna, they woke up, the dew was there, but that manna was right there waiting for them. and it had the appearance as bdellium.
So I would just have to say, I mean, just think about that shimmer, that glow every morning they wake up, except on Shabbat. And then of course on the sixth day they would have a double portion sitting out there waiting for them to pick up. So very, very interesting to see that shimmer, which gives you another picture though. And that other picture is that shimmering as you would look out as the sun would begin to hit it, and that glow that would be upon the desert floor. Then think of it as the sea of glass that is mentioned over in Revelation, and where it gives you the picture of the people gathered around the sea of glass. And that is the picture of the 12 tribes of Israel, those that have been called to be part of the remnant, the bride, gathered together, by which, what are they doing? They're picking up the manna, the bread of heaven, who is Yeshua, there that was ready to meet them every morning to give them that nourishment.
Every morning there. And he calls himself what? The bread of life, right?
That's right.
So we see again that relationship of Yeshua. So let's explore that a minute, because Yeshua used physical food as a symbol basically for spiritual provision for his people. Yet in reality, there was physical provision for that food. So that spiritual provision and that physical provision all are symbolic in that, because it's there. The word is there. The word made flesh. It was Yeshua, but Yeshua was from the beginning. He's always been. He's the word. He is the word. He is the Torah. So when we're relating it to the parallels of physical food, let's just think of some physical foods that are parallel right now. We know about what? The lamb.
Yes.
Which is eaten on Pesach. We also know about the matzah, the unleavened bread. He refers to himself as, we've talked about, what? The living water. And when we drink from him, no man, you shall never thirst again. Right?
Yes.
So let's look at John 6:32 real fast. John 6:32. And see what that says. Because here, his words in this passage link him once again. Are you there?
I am almost there.
Almost
okay.
there? Okay.
Okay, John 6:32.
Yes.
Yeshua therefore said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, it is not Moses who has given you the bread out of heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread out of heaven.
Which the Father's the one that gave him the bread out of heaven in the first place, too.
That's right.
The physical bread and the spiritual bread.
Verse 33 reads, for the bread of God, or the bread of Yah, is that which comes down out of heaven and gives life to the world.
Okay.
And so when you also look at, when you see in Revelation the sea of glass, the sea is another representation of the people of the world.
Oh, exactly. So we know that Yeshua relates himself to the manna, the bread of life. Okay. And so he makes that statement, and is most certainly, you can't avoid it, that he is talking about the manna, but he talks about himself as the true manna. The manna that fell so long ago was really symbolic for himself in his very nature, I would say. Saying, here I am, I'm there every day.
Yes.
I'm there.
You know, if we go back over to Revelation chapter 4, beginning with verse 5, where it reads, and from the throne proceed flashes of lightning, sounds and peals of thunder, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. And before the throne there was, as it were, a sea of glass like crystal. And in the center and around the throne, 4 living creatures full of eyes in front and behind. So here again, now we're having this picture, because remember what we said about the menorah. We've got the 7 stems on the menorah, and which represents, or represented within the 4 branches of the menorah, because 4 equals 7 when you follow the structure of the menorah. And considering that the menorah, as we had the example last week, comes up from, we have the different parts of the menorah, but think of it as that circle where it's all connected, where you see in the picture of a rainbow that extends from one end and arches over to the other end, you can see it as the full connection of a lamp, and all circular. It all circulates together. It is the connection, and that's what is flowing around the throne, and it's related to the 7 spirits of Yah.
Yes. And back to the manna, we see that the bottom line is that what was the purpose for Yeshua coming? It was to saints, it was to bring life to the world, to come once again so that the 2 sticks could be united. It was to provide life. And yet that very bread that fell from heaven that was there every day as the dew, as the bdellium in the Prishon that was connected to the river, which is symbolized in the menorah, it was to bring forth life to the world. When we think about the manna that fell in the wilderness for 40 years, it gave life to one group. But now what's the difference? Because of Yeshua on the stake, the bread of life, the bread of heaven, now the world has it. So we see that prophetic shadow picture of the manna that fell for those 40 years as here is Israel. But then we see the bigger picture when he came with flesh, with a word made flesh.
Right.
So we've got to remember that the shadow pictures, because what we've experienced and what we're experiencing is always going to be experienced once again. What happens to the fathers happens to the sons.
Yes. And another expansion on the word, when we look at the word manna, which is the English version of it, in the Hebrew it's manhu, and which means what is that, or what is it? And so a derivation of that word is, and I just had it in front of me, is manan, which means allotment or gift. So it was a gift.
It was a gift.
And think about Yeshua is a gift to us.
Right. So from Messiah's perspective, the manna account is transformed into this portrait of Messiah. So I want us to remember that. Now let's go forward a little bit. Because the delivery system, I want us to look at the delivery system. You were in Numbers earlier, and we read verse 7, but I want us to read verse 9 in Numbers as well. Let's read verse 9 one more time. Well, we haven't read it yet, so let's read verse 9 and see what it says.
Okay, I've got to go back there. Going back there.
We need going back music.
Going back there.
Or thumbing through the word music. Or maybe, if we could have these sound bites here, we could just hear pages shuffling.
I can make my pages sound like they're shuffling.
I think they can hear that now.
Okay. All right then. We are now looking at 11, and you wanted to say verse 9. And when the dew fell on the camp at night, the manna would fall with it. Okay, now I want us to explore that a little bit. In different versions, it talks about it falling and that the manna would fall on top of it. So the manna didn't simply hit the ground. I want us to picture that. It didn't simply hit the ground with the dust and just the manna, it came down and upon a layer of life-giving water, of that dew, that provision. So it fell upon the ground and it was gathered by the people and the animals rooted it, whatever, but it fell upon a layer of water that preserved it for the harvest by the people. Think about that. It fell upon a layer of water. Now, it's important for us to consider that because that links us to Messiah, who, although he was man in the flesh, he was still pure of sin, right? So when we touch him, we don't touch one who's been muddied by dirt or transgression or any mixture whatsoever. When we have our Messiah, when we take hold of him, when we give our lives to him, but we give it to the one who came to us in purity and to bring us home, really, to unite with us, to be our bridegroom. So when we think about that the dew
we think, okay, I want you to picture that first layer, but there's more, because Exodus 16:4 gives us that second half of the method of the delivery of the manna. Exodus 16:14. So let's look at that. Exodus 16:14. Hold that place where you're at, and let's turn to Exodus 16:14, because it's just really a great picture. So remember, it's falling on this layer of water, almost like that preserves life.
So Exodus 16:14, when the layer of dew evaporated, behold, on the surface of the wilderness there was a fine flake-like thing, fine as the frost on the ground.
Okay, now when you look at it, what is said is that it appears that almost the same at first, but there's a difference, because here it gives us different detail than Numbers 11:9. In this passage, the manna was seen when the dew ascended. So what exactly does that mean? Some would say that the word is preserving in both verses, because the key, it's almost like the manna is sandwiched in on top, and on bottom is that water, that living water. The dew fell upon the dew, and the dew was on top. It was almost like it was encased in this water. The delivery system was the dew of heaven. And so when you take both verses, you get that whole picture. And when the layer of dew has gone up, but it also is written, and when the dew fell, so Rav Yosef ben Karina said there was dew above and there was dew below, and it resembled something placed in a box. It fell upon the dew, and the dew fell upon it. Isn't that an interesting picture? The manna was encased in dew. It was protected from below, and it was protected from above. Jewish commentators of ancient times gave it this perspective. I'm just going to read you from the Talmud and Tractate Yoma 75b. It says, knowing both halves of how the manna was given to man helps us to see a bigger picture behind the symbolism of it all, and how it all relates to the Messiah, and the reasons for his equating himself with the heavenly provision. The fact that the manna had water underneath and water above is essential for us understanding how its delivery is so very special, more so than just that of a physical substance, but reaches all the way to a symbol for the Messiah. When we understand the factor of the manna having dew beneath it and above it, then we can begin to see exactly what the Holy One is trying to tell us. So what is being said? Because it goes back to the earlier account of the word, which is very similar, and it gives us light in Genesis 1:7. Genesis 1:7.
Which reads, and God made the expanse and separated the waters which were below the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse, and it was so.
Think about that. There were waters above and there were waters beneath, and life happened in the middle. Somewhere within those barriers, the waters. So it gives us, that harkens back to that very week of creation, on the second day when the waters were separated. And Elohim made the expanse and separated between the waters which were beneath the expanse, between the waters which were above the expanse, and it was so. It gives us this creative perspective, because creation was happening in between the waters.
And the very thing of the manna that is encaptured within the waters is what gave them life in the wilderness.
Yeah. So it was, how the manna was given goes all the way back to that first week. And it also shows us that manna was a new creation,
Well, and
so to speak, because creation happened in between the waters. So here's something new. It was a new thing that was given to the people.
well, can we tie in another parallel here? And what are people likened to under Scripture but like trees? And so here, its trees by the living water that are supplied this living manna, this food, so that they can bear forth fruit and their leaves will be healing for the nations.
Right.
So we have all of these connections coming together here that's given us a great revelation, and that Yeshua is the bread of life in the midst of all of that.
He is the bread of life. And encased in the waters. I just think that's a fascinating perspective, because if you look at it, that manna was a new creation provided by Yehovah. Yeshua the Messiah, when he was made flesh, it just brings forth life. He's the missing piece. And it's not even a missing piece, but he is what we needed so that we could come back and be with our bridegroom, because of our own betrayal, because of the people's betrayal. He's the second Adam, right?
Well, yes, and you could probably look at it this way. If he's the true bread from heaven, then he is also the hidden manna as spoken in Revelation 2:17. He's the hidden manna. And so,
do you want to read Revelation 2:17?
Let's jump over there and take a look at it.
You can just click on it right here. Oh, it's hard to work your mouse. There you go.
And it says, whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches or the assemblies. To the one who is victorious, I will give some of the hidden manna. And I will also give that person a white stone with a new name written on it, known only to the one who receives it. So there you go, Revelation 2:17. You want some of that hidden manna?
Yeah.
That's right. I want to be the one who's victorious.
Yes. So ultimately, when we know how the manna came and why and the way it came, it allows us to appreciate all the more why Messiah equates himself to the manna, the living manna, the manna from heaven, because we also understand that physical appearance of the manna holds merit in the light of our Redeemer, because what did that manna look like? It looked like bdellium, and it looked like a crystal sea. It looked glistening, because it was like that dew that reflected and refracted in the rainbow that shone forth. It was beauty. And so when we reference Numbers 11:7, we understand that the shape, even the manna was a seed of coriander. The manna was as a seed of coriander, in its appearance that of bdellium. So this is really important. And I wish I should have printed out pictures that we could show, because if you've ever looked at coriander seed under a microscope, because now we're still relating it to Messiah, we understand that it's a gum-like resin, and it's from a tree. So it appears like coriander, but when you look at coriander seed, it's very interesting. So everybody get your microscopes out and look at it, because when you look at it closely, it's a round sort of shape, and it's a brownish in color, but on the outside shell, it almost looks like it's been beaten. It's got all these little indentions, and it looks like it's been beaten over and over. And if you look at it, there's stripes. It's covered with stripes from one end to the other. So you see this coriander seed, that the manna resembled, as well as the bdellium in color. You see it striped and beaten. And I find that very interesting, because it brings us back to an image of something else. Because when you look at that high resolution picture, what you're going to see is that you can look at mine. It's better.
I was going to show that to everybody
That doesn't
here. I don't know if y'all can see that.
No, because it doesn't give a very good picture, actually,
No,
right there.
Not right there, it doesn't.
So anyway.
You can look it up yourself.
And it's that aspect of the seed which gave its name in Hebrew. The Hebrew text says that the word for coriander is God, Gawd, not Gad. It's spelled like Gad, Gad, but okay, I've got it backwards. Gad, the tribe is supposed to be pronounced Gawd. Coriander seed itself is supposed to be pronounced Gad, Gad. So when we ever say, I know that we mistake that, at least in Texas, we mistake that. But I hear that it's pronounced that Gad, the tribe, is pronounced in that way over and over again, incorrectly from everybody. So next time we need to remember that when we're talking about the tribe, we need to say Gawd, because Gad is really Hebrew for coriander.
There you go. You need to make that differentiation.
I got to remember that. So if we look at that, the root of that word actually is Gud, which means to whelp or attack. So the Hebrew term for coriander is basically bringing out a physical appearance of the seed because it looks like it's whelped, it's been beaten, and something has been happened to it. It's been in a battle almost is what it appears like. And so you have that image, and what is it when you keep hearing about stripes and beating? What does that remind you of?
Well, and it takes you back to what happened to Messiah on the day of his crucifixion.
It brings us right back to the Messiah, because our Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, he was wounded for our transgressions. He had the stripes that he bore on his body, on his torso, for our healing. And the manna looked like coriander seed, and coriander seed looks beaten and striped. And it immediately, isn't God amazing? Because it immediately takes us, it's prophetic of what our Messiah is going to look like, the bread of life, when he comes and he pays the ultimate price for us that we could be joined to him. That manna that resembles bdellium and coriander seed carries with, and it, but also the manna is the bread of life, and it all is connected together as a prophetic picture of what's to come. And that is amazing to me. I mean, can you imagine ever that Yahweh just puts all those details together before we would ever even know or understand? But then it's like this aha moment, like, wow. Is anybody saying anything in the room? So we can use their comments. I had to get out. So
no, but what I am looking at is how, think about this. Think about how it's sandwiched in between the upper and lower layers of that dew, and it's pressed into the middle of it, and that's part of the root of the word of coriander is that. So we know that Yeshua had to go through a pressing when he went through the garden. He went through a great time of stress where he sweated drops of blood even. I mean, it's a very intense time for him as he went through that garden, and then before he was taken off into captivity and ultimately crucified. What an amazing picture that they would see every morning. But the other side of it, it was the glistening side of it, of this picture of the manna in the dew that's shimmering across the floor of the desert again. And I keep coming back to that because it brings me back to the picture of Yeshua, where he shows up in Revelation, and we get that description of what he looks like. And so if we have that picture of what he looks like, and I want to, not only in the picture of Yeshua in Revelation chapter 1, but also in Revelation chapter 4, where it talks about, it says, immediately I was in the spirit, and behold, a throne was standing in heaven, and one sitting on the throne, and he was like a jasper stone and a sardius in appearance, and there was a rainbow around the throne like an emerald in appearance, and around the throne there were the elders, and clothed in white, and all of that. And so we have this picture again of this brilliance that's happening, that again every morning when they, and it was only in the morning that they could collect the manna, so keep that in mind. So the brilliance that they would see, and I'm thinking as the sun's coming up and it's coming over the peak of the mountain, that they're seeing that shimmer, is the picture of Yeshua Messiah that we get, that the people though are so connected to it because therein is life.
yeah.
And once again, it comes around full circle again, because we're talking about this, even this rainbow appearance. And what's that rainbow appearance is like that menorah, the upper arc and the lower arc of the menorah, that's like a circle, like the river that's connected with the Shamash. And right there is the circle of life. It's what started in the beginning in Genesis, we see fulfilled in Revelation.
Yeah. I want us, you sort of jumped the gun a little bit ago, but I want us to jump into the word manna. I was like trying to hold you back. Wait, we're not going there quite yet, but nonetheless, it's good. Now, when we use the word manna, where does that term come from? Well, it's actually an Aramaic version. It's not Hebrew itself, because it's never given as manna, but only man in its usage, or rendered actually more closely as M-O-N, mon, rather than man. So it just means what or who. And we know we've always said, oh, who, what is that? Hey, man, what is that? That's what the manna means. But let's just keep it to what or who is what mon means. So if we keep that context, it depends on whether it is understood as what or who, right? Because there's a big difference between what or who.
Yes.
Okay, so just put that on a shelf for a second. And I want us to look at, or I may read it. I may read Exodus 16:15 one more time, or you can turn there one more time, because the context depends on whether and what we need to, what we're seeing here. And I'll just read it. It says, and the sons of Israel saw, and they said, each man to his brother, what is it? For they knew not what it was. And Moshe said to them, this is the bread which Jehovah has given you to eat. So now I want you to look a little bit further. Who, H-U, means he or it. Okay, so take that. And man means who or what. So here we have this term that's used to refer to this food, and the verse is posed in the phrase who or what, but we need to understand what is the context. The Hebrew is man who, which literally means what is it, but it means more than that. In a much deeper way, the believer can look at this question, and it seals its finality in the Messiah, because when you look at what it means, the term who actually can mean he. Just as I said, it can mean he, not it, he. Picture that. So it's actually in the masculine gender anyway for the term it. So more likely it means he. Think about that. He. So scripture wants to say he. So when the people were saying man who, mon who, while they meant what is it, they were also technically saying who is he. Man who is he? Remember, it has that masculine gender. It's he. So we miss this detail in the English. We don't get it. But when we go back to the Hebrew, it opens up this whole thing, pointing once again, even in the very name manhu, saying who is he? Who is he? If we miss this detail, we miss the whole picture, because again, it's referencing who is the bread of life, who is the one that sustains us, who is the one who is he? And there's only one answer to that. It's Yeshua, the bread of life, the river of life, the living water.
Well, that's very interesting too, because when you go back to the Paleo Hebrew and we look at the mem noon connection, which is that man, that connection, remember the mem is the water or a liquid or a blood. So what are we talking about in terms of the one? We've got the dew, we've got the water
Right.
there, but the noon is also the seed, which speaks of one, it's representing continuance, but we put it together is that the blood continues. So we have the connection now going back to Yeshua. It is that it is the blood of Yeshua that brings us life.
Well, and it goes further than that, because let's look at Matthew 26 verses 67 and 68. Matthew 26 verses 67 and 68. Now the context is really the torturing of Yeshua by the soldiers. So remember this, because there's only one other time that the Hebrew phrase manhu, or that which is connected with it, is used in scripture, and it's right here in this verse.
So Matthew 26, 67 and 68, then they spat in his face and beat him with their fists, and others slapped him and said, prophesy to us, you Messiah, who is the one who hit you?
And my version says, who is he that struck you? Manhu. Who is he? The one time the phrase is used in the Aramaic New Covenant writings is found right here, where Messiah is beaten and bruised with whelps like the coriander seed and striped. It's right here. Who is he? Who is he? So the question the people asked back in the wilderness was, Man who? Who is he? It's still the same question that was asked 2,000 years later and is asked even today by those who are seeking something. Who is he? Who is the Messiah? Who is the Savior? The manna, the bread of heaven, the river of life that is glorious, that is light, that is the Torah.
That's very interesting because I'm picturing here these ragtag people, so to speak, who've been enslaved in Egypt for all these years, show up at the mountain, and yet they're fed every morning what? The manna. And the day that they were supposed to go before the mountain, they would have gone out their doors and seen the manna, but then they would have then gone to the mountain and had the thunderings and the lightnings, as I read over there in Revelation chapter 4, the same thing that happened in Exodus chapter 19. And so they see who is coming down on the mountain, but other than their bridegroom. And this is all of these pictures that God in his infinite wisdom wanted to show the people that there would be a Messiah that would come. And that's and we see it embedded in Scripture that we should not even lose. And what you even read, what the rabbis had said in the past, that their picture was even given to them. If they would simply look at the Scriptures, they would see Messiah.
It's true. It's true.
And Messiah, by the way, was not going to be just a man, but God coming in the flesh.
That's right.
And whereas they're looking for any man could be Messiah, but no, not any man. It would be this man.
Right. Well, everybody, guess what? We've got a little bit more on bdellium because we just did the relationship between bdellium that's in the Pishon to manna. So we've got a little bit more to look at of that, but we are out of time today. So that will be next week. And I want to thank you for joining us on Walking in Spirit and Truth. We are here every Tuesday and evening, 8 p.m. Central, and we would love for you to spread the word. And if you drop us a line and let us know what you think, what you want to hear, what you want to talk about. Also, if you would like to partner with us, please do so. We're praying for Yahweh, to bring us partners that will come alongside us and in this ministry. And you can do all of that. Drop us a line, partner with us, or if you would want John and I or both of us to come speak, worship, whatever at your congregation, we'll do so. You can do it all at our website, www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org. We would love to hear from you. And also, if you're ever in the Amarillo area, drop by or on Shabbat and come to our services or be a part of our services on YouTube Live on Shabbat at 6 p.m. at Central on Saturdays, approximately that time. And anyway, I think that's it.
That's about it. So, hey, thanks for joining us here and Walking in Spirit and Truth. We're going to be back next week. And by the way, we're on these on Lamb Radio, some other shows. If you want to look that up.
That's right.
And we love to have you.
There, go for it. Until next time.
Until next time.
I'm waiting for you to close out.
You want me to say that. Until next time, this is John Craig.
And this is Sandi.
Shalom.